Welcome to the Division HQ. This is our second episode. Joining me today is James Duggan.
What's up?
Brandon Tyrell.
Howdy.
And we have a guest. We have Vince Ingenito. You were reviewing the Division.
I sure am.
And we're going to talk about your thoughts, and actually all of our thoughts thus far in a little bit. That will be our intro segment. We're also going to talk about some of the coolest moments that we experienced in the game. And finally, Duggan has some tips for new players going in, which we will discuss. Let's get right into it. People want to know what you think, Vince.
So far, so mechanically, the first thing I notice about any game, right, especially shooters, what its shooting model feels like, and I'm happy with the Division's shooting model. I like that a little Counter-Strike-esque in the sense that it's not as precise or as like pristinely modeled as in Counter-Strike, but I do notice that, like, hey, with this particular AR, you know, the first, second, third, and fourth shots are going to be like bam, 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 and like, all right, so put the crosshair like on their sternum a little to the left, and I'm going to get a headshot out of that. Like little details like that to the shooting model, I like, and you know, and when it's a Tom Clancy game, you kind of expect there to be a little bit of that kind of like, you know, bullet pattern and recoil modeling that you kind of get into a jive with and have to learn under a master weapon over time. So I'm glad that that's here. It doesn't feel like, say, Battlefront, which is like just shooting by wire and just wherever the cursor is, that's where your shots are going. So I'm happy on that front right off the bat.
Let me ask you this. Do you like it?
I do. Yeah, I do. Like it's done enough to engender itself to me in the early hours that I want it to be good, and I'm open to the idea of it being good. It's doing some things in terms of how it structures its world on the multiplayer side and on the social kind of shared world aspect that is kind of puzzling to me that I don't like so much, but I'm going to see if ultimately it can overcome that.
For me, it's definitely got its hooks in. Similar to Destiny, there's that feedback loop of you're working towards getting your medical wing fully upgraded or your tech wing, and you're doing these side missions or trying to go for the big return core missions. Duggan, what do you think?
For me, it's weird because the carrot on the stick for me is the Dark Zone, and that is the promise of a fun and dynamic experience. So I think that kind of speaks a little bit of a volume about what I'm experiencing right now. I think it does something, and I'm coming at this from an MMO perspective as opposed to like coming at it from Ghost Recon or something, but it does the cardinal sin of an MMO, which I think is, it has this maybe the most gorgeous world I've seen in an MMO thus far.
It's beautiful.
And it's littered with repetitive and monotonous tasks.
Yep.
Aside from the missions, which are repetitive in some ways, I feel that those get a pass because they have hard mode. They're really meant for like 4 players. They're boss encounters, and that is just kind of a core loop that I think is fun. However, like pretty much every encounter in the game is summarized by there's a flamethrower guy, there's a sniper guy, there's an LMG guy, and then there's a dude running at you with a bat or an axe. And that is, I think, the enemy diversity. I don't know if this has to do with the aesthetic of the game being at odds with some of the gameplay options, but that for me is a bit of a letdown. That being said, it's like every other MMO where I've played where I've been like, okay, man, just get through this grind, and there's going to be some awesome PvP. There are going to be these incursions coming down the line. You're going to have great fun with your friends at the end of the game. So really, my personal verdict is a little bit in limbo right now because I'm just in that grind. So far, the grind is like, I'm having a good time. I'm collecting loot, but at the same time, it's nothing to write home about in terms of new MMO experience, I feel.
Brandon, on the first episode, we talked a lot about the core narrative and what we expected, what we thought would happen, some of the DLC also, but what are your thoughts?
I'm somewhere between, I think, James and you right now. I'm enjoying it. Like you said, it's got its hooks in me as far as the min-maxing sort of power climb goes of an RPG. As an RPG nerd, I'm really enjoying, like, every level I get to see how much better a new piece of gear will make my stats, right? Like, I'm really enjoying that. And every time you get a new gun, there's that feeling of elation for 10 minutes at a time. I side with James on the fact that a lot of the world, and it is gorgeous and beautiful, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, some of the cool little things I've noticed, but it is populated largely by repetitive actions. The JTF events, for example, I was just trying to get my my signature skill from the medical wing, which requires you to unlock the first 2, which are both 500, and then the last upgrade, or the third upgrade, is 1,000. So you need 2,000 medical. So I've just been going around like grinding JTF medical events, and for 3 of them in a row it was the exact same thing. Go into the sewers, turn on a water pump, defend a wave, turn on another water pump, and defend a wave. And then I climb out of the sewers and go to the next one, and I'm like, oh, I go back down into the sewers. So I did that 3 times in a row, and that's just the medical wing version. Like, it's disappointing that I'm seeing.
It's only 180 points too. So.
Yeah, well, it's disappointing that I'm seeing a lot of the different types of missions are this pull from the same pool. You know what I mean? So like the security missions are all the same, and the medical missions are largely the same, and the tech missions are largely the same. Having said that, the mission structure is really where the repetitiveness bothers me. The actual core gameplay loop of going into a situation, clearing out the enemies, taking out the guy running at you with a bat or an axe, or if you discover the Rikers later on, those guys have shotguns now, right? So there's this sort of escalating danger and violence that goes with it. But that core gameplay loop of going into an area, picking off a guy with a headshot, and then going in and sort of dealing with the situation and the escalating. You go from the regular guys to the purple guys, the elite kind of guys, and then you get the boss, who's the named yellow guy, and just wrecks you if you're too close. That gameplay loop, I'm actually really enjoying.
Yeah.
It's just the structure,
The redundancy.
the structure in which it's laid out, the missions and the narrative missions are fantastic, in my opinion, as far as like going in and changing things just enough to make them seem new. But those events, man, they're tough to do over and over and over and over.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree that they are repetitive. But one of my favorite things is to roll in with my crew, set up, and I'm like, all right, you guys ready? 3, 2, 1, let's do this. Pop, nuke.
Yeah.
Health turret or health area down. Okay, you deal with the snipers. I'm going to deal with the ground guys, etc., and kind of executing your plan. What were you about to say, Vince?
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. Like tactically, it's satisfying in a way that Tom Clancy games kind of usually are, and that's great. It's great that they translated that well over into kind of a more MMO or shared world format. But piggybacking on kind of like what James and Brandon were saying, I think another reason why it feels so kind of hollow and repetitive is because the outside world is completely one instance. It's just you. It's just you or whoever you bring into your instance if you invite people in or if you decide to matchmake. So that means that as opposed to Destiny, where I could be walking around the world and run into other people, or there could be a public event and then 30 people kind of rush together and just flash collaborate on something. In the Division, if I'm walking from one end of Chelsea to the other, going from the HQ to like some medical event I want to do, I'm just slogging for 5 minutes and there's not a single soul in sight anywhere. So there's no one I can just jump in and help, no one I can just randomly party up with. It just doesn't feel very dynamic. There's no special events going on. It's always the same things happening in the same place. The same 2 thugs I'm shooting and looting that same corpse, having the same conversation every time.
Right. So counterpoint to that, because I do agree that there is some lacking in immersion, though I think that the place where this game shines emergently is the Dark Zone. But this game does something that Destiny never did and still doesn't do, and I'm like, where is this feature? Matchmaking.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Anytime, anywhere.
Yes.
You can go to a laptop in your base, you can go to a safe house, which there are some other players there, and then you can just open your social pane and matchmake and do whatever you want.
And it's worked fantastically.
Right. Yeah, for me it has too.
For
very
us.
quick.
I will applaud Ubisoft that after that first opening night hiccup, matchmaking and servers have been super smooth the entire time.
I agree.
On both PS4 and Xbox One.
You actually have a theory about the Dark Zone, and they are bringing daily and weekly events there. They're bringing in loot trading, a lot of stuff that Destiny players wanted. You have a theory about the Dark Zone and why you only encounter players there.
Yeah, it's hard for me to, like, the Dark Zone, the promise of what it is so much more interesting than what the rest of the game seems to be. And also, when you look at the idea of the Dark Zone, that's clearly what they were showing us early on in the game's life. The first demos of the Division were like one group of three agents going through the city, running into another group of 3 agents, and then kind of there's being a little bit of a stare down. Are we going to shoot? Are we going to work together? Are we going to work together for a little? Yeah, are we going to work together and then betray each other at the end? Like that was kind of like the original initial promise of the Division. Now that promise exists literally here in the middle of a huge city. And so it feels to me like it must have been that the Dark Zone in their original design doc, that the Dark Zone is actually what the game was. That the whole game was supposed to be that way. And then I think at some point they went, wow, this is a little bit harder from a network architecture standpoint to pull off than we thought it was going to be. And we gotta scale it back. That's what I think happened.
Even just welcoming new players into the game. Can you imagine if Camp Hudson was the Dark Zone. You know,
Sure.
like you're fresh off the helicopter and you take 3 steps and then somebody drops you.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
I can
Speaking of-
imagine being upset.
That's actually a great segue to talk about kind of what the community's been experiencing with their beginning time in Division. We've seen on Reddit this a queue of people that are trying to access that first computer to build their character, and they can't.
In
and
Brooklyn,
it's a collision issue because like only one person can access.
I
the
love that there's
object
an
at a
animation for
time.
that though. That if there's somebody standing in front of the computer and you can just access it, you go like,
Okay, I did it.
and that is hilarious to me. But like, yeah, that's like MMOs 101. Is like you don't
do that.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have players have colliding models.
It's a bottleneck.
Yeah.
But-
It's the one place. It's the one place in the world where you can actually just run into other people, unlike the rest of it.
And
Like I
it's
was
a
saying,
huge
and it's a
pain in the ass.
huge pain.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
come on, guys. Like, really?
It's funny, but it was really upsetting for a lot of people that were anxious to get in and try out this
Sure.
game. And then you got people that'll stand in the door
Block
so
the
you
doorway,
can't
yeah.
progress.
Yeah.
You know, there have been definitely frustrations in the community.
I will say though that griefing is a time-honored tradition in
Oh
MMOs.
yes, that's half the fun, really. And
Well,
that's kind of what the
of
Dark
course
Zone
you
is.
would say
I don't
that.
know if it's half
Of
the
course
fun,
you
but
would say that, James Duggan.
I'd be lying if I said kiting a giant monster from one end of the world to a major capital
Yeah.
hub is not like doesn't make me
Or
smile.
bringing a blood plague in that kills
Yeah.
everybody in an area.
I have voodoo dolled so many people like you two in my life. Just be like, I hate you, whoever you are.
But I will say, opening night is maybe not the place to do that.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
not.
Somebody actually hit level 30 Arex. Got to give a shout out to him.
Yeah.
He's a big Destiny player, and somehow he hit level 30 already. You're crazy.
Stand up, man.
Anyway, we've had a pretty good experience with our online.
Yeah.
Have you guys encountered anything weird? I had a little bit of lag last night, but besides that, nothing really major.
I had one on Xbox One. I had one random, just hard freeze.
Yeah.
I was hopping a fence to go pick up one of the cell phone things.
Yeah.
And like mid fence hop, it was just like nope. And
Yeah.
but other than that, I haven't
Did you
had
have to
any.
restart the game?
Yeah, I just had to restart the game. I haven't had any performance problems with it otherwise.
Twice today, and only twice have I ever seen this. I got like super bad frame rate. Like
Really? On Xbox One?
Yeah, on
Or-
Xbox One. It started chunking right as I initiated combat with like a group of enemies. One of the cleaners shot his flamethrower, and I headshotted a guy, and just sort of this perfect storm of particles and effects and numbers, and it just went
Game's like,
it went slideshow for probably a good 5 or 6 seconds.
I haven't had that problem on my PC.
And then,
You're playing on
look
the
at
PC
this guy.
platform. That's actually where the line queue image came from. How was your
wow.
experience?
I got in there very quick. So at 9 p.m. Pacific time, I jumped in, was in there extremely quick. So I think I probably missed the majority of that and got to the point where I'm no longer instanced with other players.
Yeah.
And another advantageous thing of not having players in your instance, sure, the con there is not having these emergent experiences in a PvE open world setting, but the pro there is like you don't have to wait to kill named monsters, which is
True.
So I do feel like it's.
they're people, James. They're not monsters.
Well, I'm sorry, they have health bars above their head. and
Depends
they
on
have-
which platform
they
you're
have
playing
loot-
on.
They have loot that I need and want. So
They have health bars like the rest of us.
Yeah, so my experience has been good. I had one scenario where I was doing a mission and I was like trying to hold down something to interact with just an echo, and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And then I went to loot a container and that wasn't working, and I figured out that I had like hit some kind of lag thing where like I just had to relog, and once
Yeah.
I relogged it was fine. And then there was that day one crash, but besides that, compared to like other games of this nature in the past, this has been buttery smooth in my experience, but maybe not everybody.
Yeah,
everybody
I'll
else.
say matchmaking has so far been a dream, a breeze. It's totally fine. There was one point where I joined somebody, and there was like a slight bit of delay in the beginning. I would headshot a guy, and he would die a second later, but that's smoothed out halfway through the mission, and since then, nothing.
I really hope Bungie's looking and seeing like some of the things that they can implement in Destiny. Let's move on really quick. What are some of the coolest things that you guys have encountered? Duggan, let's start with you.
So the coolest thing, I wrote it down because it literally just happened about 30 minutes ago. I was playing, I hit around level 15, I was just doing this mission, and a boss dropped an item that was a sawn-off shotgun for my pistol slot. And that blew my mind.
That's right. I got that
because-
last night too.
Yeah, and it was just like, and I think that actually that was kind of the tip of the iceberg on a larger issue at play here, despite the fact that I agree with you that the RPG nature of the element is very well fleshed out, very well explained, really engaging, and like going from one weapon to another is really good for this for the context of the fact that all of the weapons are just slightly different handling versions of an assault rifle, except for like a shotgun or a sniper rifle. So like with that, that's cool. But then when I compare it to something like Destiny loot or World of Warcraft loot, where it's like this, sword creates a flame explosion every time you hit somebody with it. So I got that shotgun for my pistol slot, and I was like giddy with excitement. I was like, I get to have a sniper rifle, an assault rifle, and a shotgun.
It's a totally new mechanic. Yeah.
Right. So like I think they need way more of that in terms of the loot, because even though there are those talents and you can really dive deep and really have this cohesion with your character, I do think that the loot is a little bit like there's maybe 7 or 8 archetypes of weapons, and it holds true to those pretty much throughout so far, what I've seen at least.
Here's a question I have for you on that front.
Sure.
Do you know if, and this is getting in the weeds I guess a little bit, but do you know if for the purpose of mods that increase your damage with a particular class of weapons, if that counts as a pistol or a shotgun?
That's a great
I believe it
Because
counts.
that would be
I believe
interesting
it
to
just
me.
counts as a sidearm.
Yeah.
Well, they
It's
actually
fine.
have they say plus the pistol damage and
Yeah.
plus the shotgun damage.
Yeah.
There is no plus the
I
sidearm
assume it would be a
damage.
shotgun, but
Yeah.
and I hope that problem alleviates itself when we get to the end game and we saw that like military MK
Yeah.
470 or whatever that like basically increased the duration of your signature skill by 20% every
Yeah.
time you killed a guy, and it was an LMG with a huge
It was
clip.
ridiculous.
20% on every kill?
So basically, yeah, you would
I've
just
seen like
have
5% on
you
every
would just
kill.
have
Like, damn.
Well, this is like top level weapon.
Yeah, it would be a scenario where like you're rushing to find enemies to kill to keep your signature skill
Yeah.
going to get that extra 100% damage and 30% crit. So maybe at that point, the weaponry and the gear will alter the gameplay in a significant way. But so far, it's been like, I'm picking up the same stuff that it's not like, again, like you said, it's not bad, but it's just not that really crazy hook.
And I mean, that's, being a Tom Clancy game, it is sort of grounded in that sort of reality setting. And I think that both works for it because it's sort of tangible. You can actually relate to some of this stuff. But it also works against it because in Destiny, I mean, you kill Oryx and you get this gun that bends space and time and does all this amazing stuff. And you get it and you're just like, I'm so blown away by the things that I can do with the things that I'm given in Destiny. Whereas in this game, it's much more of a, you got to dig for that kernel, like I just got a pistol that has a 5% chance to cause someone to bleed, and then when I stack that with a talent that has a 30% chance to cause bleeding targets to pass the bleed to everyone, now I'm trying to do I'm going into battles with just a pistol, trying to get like a mass bleed.
Which
going,
means maybe I want to focus on the riot shield.
Sure,
since that's going to give me lots of protection while I have my pistol out.
And so now I'm at that point where it's not just about getting the better rifle or a better shotgun or a better sniper or a marksman rifle. It's about getting the gun with the talent that sort of synergizes with talents and perks and gear that I want to do to kind of create a build,
Inventory management for me has been painstaking. It's been pretty
Really?
rough to
Really?
choose what I'm
Yeah.
going to delete and
Yeah.
what I'm going to keep. I'm like, oh, but that one ups my weapon skill or whatever.
So like
stuff
I'll
that.
I'll delete a mask with firearm on it, right? And then I'll get a talent that I need 50 more firearms.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Dude, the changes between your health and your DPS are huge. Like, I
huge,
had
yeah.
a pair of gloves
Big
that
swings.
literally, if I took off, halved my health.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was like, well, I can't do that.
Can't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I love that fact though. By the way, that
You have to choose.
You have to choose those things, and in Destiny, the 3 core stats, like they have like marginal
Yeah, it was
kind
like-
of percentage effects on the cooldown of one thing.
Faster grenade
You know what I mean?
cooldowns, not like half a health bar.
Right, exactly.
Like,
they
this
have
is-
much bigger impact here,
Yeah.
and also I love how certain talents that are tied to weapons, like a weapon has a specific talent on it. You need to actually have certain. You need to hit certain thresholds
Yeah.
for stats. That's old school. Not even Diablo 3 does that. That's old school Diablo 2 stuff, where there's stat requirements in
Yeah,
order to
yeah,
do
yeah.
something.
Yeah,
I like that.
piggybacking off of what you said, even if they're not like initially upfront flashy and crazy, when you start to dig into the RPG element, it is insane what the gear can do, because I like started stacking a little bit of skill power just on one item. I just was like, you know what, I'm going to take skill power here. It's huge. It's 50 or 60 more than I normally have. I used my heal, and it brought me from the beginning of 1 pip to like halfway through the overheal.
Oh, nice.
Man,
So I was
going
like,
full
yeah.
electronics and hitting someone in the face with a sticky bomb might be one of the best things in the game.
Oh yeah.
So kudos. for
Damage
that,
is huge.
I guess.
We're getting kind of into the weeds.
Oh,
with
sorry,
this
yeah,
topic. Let's talk about some of our favorite moments. For
Okay.
you,
Building full electronics and hitting someone in the face with a sticky bomb.
got it. For you, it was kind of like getting a really cool weapon. For me, it was actually a mission where you go into, I think it was a mall,
Yeah.
and the flamethrower guys are just torching everything,
Yeah.
and the building's on fire.
The Christmas tree, the burning
Yeah,
Christmas
yeah,
tree.
you
gotta
gotta
find
like
the
turn
money.
on the sprinklers, and like you feel this sense of urgency to get through the mission, and like you gotta take out these guys and get the money that has the medical
Yep.
wing stuff that you need. I really like that from a technical perspective and also just like how it made me feel as I was going through the mission.
100%. And that's what getting back to what I was saying before about how the core gameplay loop is always the same, whether be it an event or a mission, but the missions have just enough narrative and just enough different about them, like a burning mall, right? That forces you to go up these levels and like try to get through the fire to find narratively laced objects that normally in an event would just be like pick up the suitcase, you know? So there's just enough narrative sort of coded around the missions that make them feel different, I guess, is the way to put it. I guess enjoyably different, you know.
Definitely.
And for me, like it's also like I said in my first review in progress about some of the early world building that the game does really effectively. So I kind of I'm cheating. I already wrote this that I said I felt this, but right when you get when you're at Camp Smith, that's the first camp.
The first one? It's I forget what it's called.
The one where you land at?
Yeah.
Camp Hudson?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first camp.
Right.
We'll call it that.
Camp number one.
Yeah.
So when you first come through kind of that first like kind of snaking tunnel of like quarantine zone kind of area, and then you come out and like the sun's all bright in your face. You come out and as you come into focus, right there on your right, there's a bunch of people standing in front of kind of a makeshift memorial that has like the American flag draped over it and has a bunch of firefighters' helmets on it, and it's like I'm an older dude. I was a young man during 9/11. I was going to school 25 minutes away from Ground Zero pretty much, and my father was in the city that day. I knew some of my friends were family of firefighters and police officers. Like it's kind of a bit of like it's a little bit of a shameless heartstring pulling, but
emotionally evocative.
But it definitely invested in me immediately. Like, I saw many memorials like that in New York, when I was back home, and so that immediately kind of rooted me emotionally in the world and kind of gave me a sense of like New York is going through this again, this kind of a tragedy again, and like there's even little allusions to that on the radio. Like one of the radio personalities at one point says, it's like, hey, everyone, this is our time that we need to come together and not sow fear, but like work together towards things. Like this is New Yorkers. This is what we've done. Yeah. And this is what we do. And I was like, ooh, yeah. I remember when we did that.
Yeah. Has that been one of your favorite experiences? That sort of stab in the heart.
Yeah. Those little in between. Finding I more and more I've played multiplayer games over the last few years. I used to be a primarily single player person. As I've gotten more into multiplayer games over the last couple of years, I continually find myself more impressed with how multiplayer designers find ways to tell stories, even with the fact that most of the action is driven by the players, and that's hard. And I admire it when I see it. So,
Overwatch.
Yeah,
Brandon, what about you? What's been your favorite experience?
I mean, I've already touched on the weapons and the power creep and all that, but I think honestly, my favorite part of the game is just sort of the little details that go into it, the level of detail. Like Vince was saying about the radio host having very evocative imagery with the things he was saying. Also, just walking through the streets, if you take time to stop and look at it, and I'm not talking about like a Ninja Turtle Easter egg or anything, but like I saw. And I actually have footage of this, and it's kind of silly that this is one of my favorite things. But I saw a crow fight a rat in the middle of the street.
Wow, get out of here!
Yeah, like the crow was like pecking at it, and it would jump on it, and the rat would jump back, and they'd fight and like kind of do this thing for a while.
The rat won, right? It's New York. The rat won.
No, it was a stalemate. It was a draw. Like they both just went their separate ways, and I was like, all right, I feel like I got my money's worth. But like just dumb stuff like that, or like walking down the street, you see a couple in the window, or you see a guy in the window looking out. And I turned and looked up with my gun aimed. I looked up, and he saw me aim the gun up and just went, and then dropped down and killed the lights in the room.
Oh wow!
And it's just like, really cool little stuff like this, or like you fire a shot through the glass and they freak out and drop and kill the lights in the apartment. It's just all this tiny little stuff. Or like, it's awful to say, but like sort of seeing the downfall of New York from the cleaners and the rioters and the Rikers and what they do. Those horrifying CCTV videos that you find everywhere, where you see people run through the subway and the Rikers chase them down and beat them to death, or you see cops, responding to a missing vehicle and then the Rikers, shoot them. Like it just these really, really stark, bleak moments that are also reinforced by just sort of the stuff you find in the environment, like JTF officers, strung up or splayed open and like all this really tough stuff. Like the city itself, I think, has a personality to it, and what alleviates some of the repetition that we were all talking about before is really sort of like pulling out the personality from the environment.
Yeah.
And I absolute kudos to the dev team that made New York, because it's a beautiful city and it is so full of tiny little details that you might never see them all. You probably never will.
There's definitely a lot to like. Finally, we both had a lot of time, we've all had a lot of time with the game. One last thing I want to do is kind of let the players that are just getting started know some tips that we may have come up with. Duggan, you're actually putting together a feature for this.
And a lot of the stuff, even after hours and hours of the beta and playing the game, I didn't know these myself. So it's just stuff. The game does actually a very good job of telling you, like, hey, here's how you do this. This is what this is. You can see, like, if you go into your skills, you can see the base skill damage or healing, and then it'll show you what you have with your
everything.
Gear, which games like Diablo don't even do that.
Right. Sure.
So that's a really deep cut. But anyway, these are some of them. The first one, and probably the most immediately effective one, is don't sell your junk weapons or gear. Deconstruct them instead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The money. So for two reasons, but the main reason is the money at low end. What you will get for selling your weapons, right?
Yeah.
Gets exponentially higher, as where if you craft it, it turns it into a crafting material that scales with you for the rest of the game. So basically, you're going to get more out of your end game progression if you just scrap everything. I've literally not touched a vendor my entire time, besides maybe like the Dark Zone vendor to see what he had, but besides that.
Even the guy that builds mods for you where you can actually craft things, don't go there until you're in end game, because your stuff is still worth it just as much.
I think it's similar to like other MMOs, and we make these parallels all the time, but like, hit max level, then spend. Like, don't go to the auction house as a level 1 gnome and look for a sword, basically.
Right.
Bleed and fire effects prevent you from sprinting, so that those are caused by fragmentation and the fire grenades, incendiary grenades, and then the disorient grenade disallows you from getting in cover. That's a status effect that will come up, and you'll see it on your UI, but it just really isn't displayed anywhere. You kind of just have to learn from experience what those do. That comes in really handy in the Dark Zone, but we aren't quite there yet. The next thing is higher DPS doesn't always mean better, especially if there are two totally different weapon types. So like I have an assault rifle, and then I have a great sniper rifle. The assault rifle will almost always be higher DPS. You have to go in, compare. There's a compare button, and you can see the damage, the rate of fire, stuff like that, and just try the gear and see if it works out for you.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that real quick, DPS is very different from damage. So like Duggan was saying, you could have an assault rifle with an amazing DPS, but that sniper rifle with a high enough bullet damage, you're going to one-shot people with headshots.
Right.
So definitely like consider that if it's green as a weapon, it might not always suit your playstyle.
Exactly.
Even when you're comparing two assault rifles, like honestly, like the DPS is an ideal number in which you're hitting every single shot. Every single shot. Whereas like I've preferred an AK with a higher per bullet, damage, where I'm just gonna fire a 2-round or a 3-round burst.
Yeah.
And all those are gonna land, but like I'm not like sure if I had the M4, the police M4, and I just lay into the fire button and somehow I land all those shots, like maybe I'll have more sustained DPS, but I mean like that's not how I fire assault rifles, so it doesn't make sense.
Especially because a lot of the time you're behind cover. So that assumes you're out of cover firing all the time. But if you're not, because you don't want to be dead, like you'll pop out 3 bullets, pop back, pop out 3 bullets. So that AK is going to do more DPS for you.
Yep. I've been using the heavy weapon, so I just lay down cover on everybody and make them go suppressed. And I'm like, all right, you snipe, you flank, go ahead.
Yeah, that's really good. Especially if you're playing solo, you don't really run into the suppression mechanic.
Right.
But suppression is your best friend if you're playing with a friend, because, like Destin said, if you had an LMG, which I love that there is no like hard indicator of like LMGs can suppress enemies. Any weapon can suppress enemies, but LMGs have a huge mag and a high rate of fire. So basically, they are ideal because the only enabler for suppression is you're just shooting at the enemy behind cover, and they'll go down and you'll actually see a little indicator above their head, which will get slimmer and slimmer, and then they'll pop back up. But like Destin, for instance, could lay down suppressive fire, and I could go from behind with like a shotgun and bam, dead. And the enemy will do nothing.
A great way to piggyback off that is when you're suppressing them, have your buddy throw like a stun grenade or a flashbang or something. So then once the suppress is over, then they stand up, and then you all lay into it.
That only works with NPCs, unfortunately, no other players. And just quickly with that higher DPS thing, you also will want to, if you're directly comparing one like an AK to another AK that you just got, and you're not sure which is better, if you have a ton of mods on the first AK, you need to strip those mods before you do the comparison, because that does factor into DPS and what you see displayed.
Every
on the
mod
stat screen.
seems to add at least a little bit of damage.
Right.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Even things like increasing the mag capacity, which I don't really understand.
Yeah, every mod, even if it's not listed as damage increasing,
Right.
it increases damage a little bit.
You can actually look, as you're equipping them, it'll show how much of an impact it has on your DPS, but not necessarily.
I think the only ones that don't do it are like threat reduction and like status effect stuff.
Yeah.
But like
Right.
if it
Like
puts
stability.
suppression or
yeah,
something
if it
like
puts
that.
more mags in the chamber, that's another bullet, so that's higher DPS kind
Yeah,
of thing.
sure.
You know, that makes sense.
This one is a little bit of a deep cut, but you can equip a maximum of 4 talents at once, so don't go crazy and go to like your military wing and just be like, I'm just going to get all the talents. Because those, unlike perks, you have to select, and even at the beginning, I'm level 15 right now, and I can only equip 1 talent.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind when you are upgrading your base. Also, perks, on the other hand, are like infinitely stackable and applicable. Any perk you get, you have forever. They all passively stack on top of each other.
So
there's that.
I'd like to piggyback off the perk real quick if
Sure,
I can.
please.
When you first start the game and you get to your base of operations, you can choose between the first 3 missions, medical, tech, or security. I recommend you do security first.
XP.
That's the Lincoln Tunnel mission, because the perk you get off of getting your control room, which is what you unlock when you do the first security mission, is a flat 10% XP gain.
Yep.
So
Good point.
So that is going to stick with you for the rest of the game, and those other 2 missions are going to benefit from the extra 10%.
The earlier
XP.
in the game you get an XP boost, obviously you're getting a multiplicatively higher amount out of it.
I did that like the second I could.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did too.
absolutely.
Sorry to hijack.
No, that's a
That was
great
good.
note. That's a great note.
You got any more?
I do. Crafting material containers, and there's a video on this on IGN, and it's caused quite a kerfuffle.
Kerfuffles.
But I mean, it's like a scenario where we found it.
Yeah.
We telling people about it both serves our needs as well as the needs of the developer, because now they know that that's a thing. But basically, the way that relootable containers work is if I go to a toolbox right outside my base, there's one like right next to it or something. Basically, go to a toolbox right outside your base, open it, you'll have tools, and if you keep playing and come back to that maybe like 3 hours later or so, it'll be relootable. But you can circumvent that whole process by just joining another player's instance, be it a friend, be it joining a match-made game. And you can literally just sit there and spam matchmake and stockpile. It's cheesy, it's an exploit, but hopefully it'll get fixed.
It is super cheesy, but it's beneficial.
Thanks,
like,
Duggan.
it helps. And that's
Lay
not
it on.
ruined the
Lay
game.
it on. Lay it on.
that's not just your home base. You can do that at any safe house where you just matchmake in that area.
Yes.
So if you go to an area, there's a police station up in Clinton that I really, really like that's got like 5 weapons bags and 2 chests in it.
Jeez.
And so I'll go.
The pizza's good near there too.
Oh, there you go.
So I'll go to the Clinton safe house and matchmake. I actually haven't done it yet, but I imagine I could go to the Clinton safe house, matchmake, go run to my police station, and then just find a new one.
Yeah.
You know?
Some of us will do it legit, James.
Some of us. Some of us. Some of us
No, I'm
have to-
totally going to do that probably.
Yeah.
Some of us will do
We'll
it
see.
legit,
Do it
and
in
some of
your-
us are going to win.
Do it at your own risk.
Right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the ban system is going to be like. I don't know if that's punishable. I doubt it will
I
be,
can't
but
imagine
proceed
that
at your
they're
own
gonna-
risk,
yeah.
please. And then finally, the Dark Zone doesn't reward conventional experience towards your character level.
Yeah.
So I think we're all kind of in agreement. Like, unless
go.
you're just going in there to
Endgame.
fool around, wait until level 30 to go into the Dark Zone.
I went in there to check
That's
it
it.
out. It's kind of fun. It has a really good gameplay loop of like you kill some people, you extract, more NPCs show up, you get more loot, and you kind of get trapped in there. You're like, well, I got to get my gear out. I got a new thing.
Dude, the NPCs just spawn.
That's
like
what happened to
crazy.
us in this stream.
not a fan of.
Was it yesterday?
Yeah.
That's what happened to us on the stream yesterday. Is where I found a piece of blue loot, went to the extraction zone, killed the guys there, was extracting, and then they respawned, and so I kept
Continuously.
killing
It
them.
wasn't like just randomly happened.
Yeah.
When you hit, because this happened to me too, when you hit the extract flare, they'll just continuously spawn, which like, come on, that's the PvP zone. Like I don't really, it irks me because those PvE mobs are so challenging.
They're
and
way harder
so
than the ones-
disruptive.
Well, to be
that,
fair, we
like,
were like 3 levels low for that area.
I guess, but like I couldn't imagine those being trivial at level 30 when they're all like
yeah.
high end, and so I want to go into that area to have emergent player and versus player interaction, not to be swarmed by more NPCs. That's what That's what's been happening the entire progression of there.
Yeah,
Dark,
I'm not-
Zone's been pretty dead for me. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
We're
it's
running
no,
a little
it's
late
no.
on time.
Yeah.
It's been pretty dead for me also, and I would like to see a little bit
More action.
going on there for sure. Guys, as we wrap up, are there any final thoughts? Vince, you being the reviewer, I think you should go first.
Yeah, I mean, right now mechanically it's solid. from an RPG standpoint, as you guys have covered off very well on, like it passes muster for me. I didn't think it would. I thought it was going to be weak as an RPG.
Yeah.
As much as I love Destiny, I think that was a little weak as an RPG, especially at launch. So I'm already happy with where it is there. I really hope that going around the world that's not the Dark Zone starts to feel a little bit more interesting as I get higher in level.
Yeah. Brandon?
Yeah, just to echo those sentiments, I'm really enjoying sort of the RPG elements and building my character right now. I'm excited to see sort of what's left. I feel like I'm about halfway through. I'm level 16 right now, but
You beat me by 1.
I walked through the Dark Zone and then I exited on the east side into a district called Murray Hill at like level 14, and I was running down the street not even realizing, and I saw some guys firing against some JTF, so I went to help the JTF. And then just from like 3 blocks away, I caught a stray bullet in the chest and just fell down and died.
I know right where you are, and I'm like, yeah, he died.
Yeah.
The end of the story is I died.
Yeah. So I'm really, really excited to go back and die again. So like it's getting to the point now. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel as far as an end game, and I can't wait to sort of see what's below the tip of that iceberg.
Duggan?
Yeah, I kind of tore into the repetitive nature as well as some of the Dark Zone elements, but at the end of the day, like literally the moment we get out of this, I'm going to go play it. Sure. Because I'm really enjoying
That's
it
fair.
in terms of, but this is, you have to understand the rose-tinted goggles through which I'm viewing this as an MMO player. I love playing MMOs with my friends. At the end of the day, like whenever a review is done, I feel as though it's either a recommendation or a non-recommendation. I literally recommended this game to all of my MMO friends that I've been playing with for a decade, and they are eating it up. They are like 10 levels higher than me. So I think it has its problems, but what I'm most excited for about this game is the continual support, which was kind of teased in that DLC trailer. Like that, at the end of the day, sold me because I'm just like, yeah, look, they're hopefully going to listen to the community and make this game the game that the community wants to play. So, yeah.
Definitely. Well, I'm hooked. I stayed up too late. I stayed up till 5:30 in the
Yeah,
morning.
I know. You
couldn't
looked like
put
a
it down.
zombie yesterday.
I couldn't put it down. Last night it was 2 o'clock, and I said, I'm stopping at 12:30, so it's definitely got its hooks in me. I'm really enjoying it. If you guys want to play it with me, you can check out my channel, twitch.tv/thedestin channel. We've been streaming here on IGN also. We have a review in progress. Duggan is putting up tips. Brandon, you working on Division stuff?
Yeah, I got a couple videos in the pipeline right now, but
Awesome.
mostly just doing co-op and seeing what's at the end of the game.
Cool. Vince, thank you for joining us today. Guys, it's been a pleasure as always. This is an experiment, however, so if you like the show, be sure you're checking it out on iTunes, sharing it with your friends. We're also available on IGN's Xbox One app, IGN's PlayStation 4 app, so you can really watch wherever you want to. Thanks for listening. This has been The Division HQ.